Hello and welcome to my channel. Bonjour et bienvenue sur ma chaîne. My name is Muriel, and in this review I will be talking about The Handmaid's Tale sequel, The Testaments, of course, by Margaret Atwood. What can I say about this? I liked it. I really did. Now, keep in mind that my opinion of this is heavily tied to my opinion of The Handmaid's Tale. I will say now that when I do review series of books, I tend to see them and evaluate them as a whole. So, for example, in the coming 2 weeks, I will be rereading The Earth-Sea Cycle. I will be reviewing the series in its entirety, not book by book. But here, I mean, it's a duology, and the second book came out years after the first one. So I think it's relevant to do a separate review. Anyway, so the writing style is obviously similar to what I had to say about it in my review of The Handmaid's Tale, because it's the same author and, you know, again, clear writing, clear, concise, crisp, a few beautiful metaphors, easy to read, not in the sense that it's basic writing, but in the sense that it's fluid. The structure of the novel is a bit different here this time around, because we have 3 different point of view characters. So it's at the same time divided in 3 narratives for the 3 different characters. There's also, I would say, dual timelines, because each character reflects upon their life up until the moment where the main action takes place. I feel I'm really doing a crap job of explaining this. But basically, there's an event that happens that will bring some of the characters together. So you have that timeline, and you have the timeline of each character explaining their life and how they grew up, or what happened to them since the Republic of Gilead came into power for one of the characters, who is Aunt Lydia. So that's what I have to say about the writing itself. So the characters. So this is quite different. In The Handmaid's Tale, you have one character, Offred, who tells her story. Here we have 3. It's still the same theme of the literature of the witness. They are all witnessing events and partaking in those events and, you know, explaining their lives and the events that led to their existence, especially for the 2 younger characters, or to their current position in Gileadian society in the case of Aunt Lydia. So the 3 characters are, like I just said, Aunt Lydia, the famous Aunt Lydia, who isn't actually that overtly fleshed out in The Handmaid's Tale. She's seen as extremely negative and aggressive and oppressive. This is probably the strongest point of the novel, is Aunt Lydia's section, basically explaining why she became an aunt, and then what she does with that bit of power Gilead has given her. We get to see Gilead a bit more fleshed out, especially with regards to the institution of the aunts. We get introduced to a new category of females, the Pearl Girls, which are basically aspiring aunts. I wouldn't say Aunt Lydia is a likable character by any means, but you can kind of get it. It was like, yes, I understand what's going on here. I understand your choices. I can't forgive you for the bad things you've done, but I can understand, like, this character makes sense. It's one of these beautifully nuanced shades of grey characters that I really appreciate in novels. And then you have Agnes, who is Offred's daughter, mentioned in The Handmaid's Tale. Now, her birth name is Hannah, but obviously all the children that Gilead has taken from the women who have sinned according to biblical Gileadian law, those children are taken away, given to new families. So Agnes, formerly known as Hannah, who has been taken from her mum and from her dad when she was 5, so she doesn't really remember them at all. She is also a very strongly fleshed out character, I feel. A gentle soul, I would say, with she has a good heart and she has faith. She believes in God, but even she can sense that there's something off about Gilead, about the teachings she's being given by her mother, by her school, mostly by her school. Yes, the girls do go to school, but I mean, imagine Victorian prepare girls for marriage and kids type of school, which I suppose is better than nothing, and she can sense that it's just something doesn't quite add up. I had a lot of respect for her. I could not agree with her religious views, but I could really appreciate her compassionate spirit and her deeply felt, ingrained sense of justice, which fundamentally leads her to question the validity of the Republic of Gilead, and that's very important to the story. And then finally, you have Daisy, who also has another name. I feel like at this point, everyone should know who she is, but out of principle, I'll just call her Daisy. But I think Daisy was a weaker character from a writing development point of view. Because of the way the story is told and structured with the timelines, I felt you actually got to know her less as a person, her childhood, what she experienced. I felt there was a bit of a gap there, a void, a lack of something. She wasn't as fully fleshed out, perhaps. She's, more the average teenage girl that you could find in any regular Western country. And then her life gets turned upside down and she's just thrown into this maelstrom of events and she has to deal with all that. And that was done well. Actually, I will say another point on the writing. Margaret Atwood knows how to write teenage girls. Because at some point she got on my nerves, actually. I was like, oh, you're annoying. And I was like, oh, right, it's because she's an average teenage girl. Nothing wrong with being that kind of teenage girl, it's a normal part of life. But, it was a bit annoying to read as a grown woman. That's all I'm saying. But also means it was very well done on the part of Margaret Atwood because it was convincing. So it also gets back to a slight issue with pacing. Again, there's a nice, uniform progression to the story. And then there's a point towards the 3/4 mark of the book where it accelerates all of a sudden. And the characters, especially Daisy, is thrown into action. And a bit of a spoiler here, but she becomes part of the resistance movement in Canada. And I know that technically speaking, younger people, inexperienced people have been part of resistance movements in World War II, for example. So I am aware of that on a purely intellectual level, but emotionally, I couldn't really buy it for some reason. So that to me was a weak point of the novel. It just accelerated a bit too much. I should also mention there are a couple of side characters. We see the other founding aunt besides Aunt Lydia. And it's quite fascinating to see the different psychologies of those women. You also have another commander. I guess no Gileadian tale would be complete without a commander. This time it's Commander Frederick Judd, who is actually mentioned in The Handmaid's Tale in the epilogue. And he is a piece of crap. He's even worse than the commander in The Handmaid's Tale, honestly. This guy is actually a gross pervert. No, he's disgusting. Really. Otherwise, the story is good. Again, there's a lot of world building that completes the information you're given in The Handmaid's Tale, so I was so happy about that. That's what I wanted, and I got it. Like I said, the character development for Aunt Lydia is brilliant. Agnes is also very good. And then to see them interacting was interesting, because they do interact at some point. And then to contrast that with Daisy in Canada. Now that was an interesting aspect also of the novel. Canada isn't that friendly towards the resistance movement. I thought this was also kind of a sub-theme. Countries, especially perhaps Western countries, that are a bit too complacent towards other countries with authoritarian regimes or regimes that have values that run counter to the ideals of democracy and human rights. They're not actively hunting down the resistance, but they're like, we don't really want you here. We just want to not get bombed by Gilead. And, Gilead has a consulate or an embassy or both in Canada. It's a bit weird, it's a bit jarring to read about that. Again, like I said, it's a literature of the witness. The importance of having first-hand accounts of what happens and what it actually means in human terms. It's all well and good to see news about a military coup, about a terrorist attack, but what does it actually mean in terms of the human individual, the human experience? And I think this is what this book fundamentally talks about. And then once again, like in The Handmaid's Tale, it's about female experience, the variety of female experience. We are talking about 3 women having different takes on a, broadly speaking, similar event, experience, regime. The Testaments is also, I think, and this is something Margaret Atwood said herself, it's about resistance, obviously. It's also about how authoritarian regimes fall, because even they fall. And so it gives, hints at how this can happen. So it's fundamentally a book about hope as well, I would say. In The Handmaid's Tale has hope at its ending, but this is more overtly about hope, about sowing the seeds of destruction for tyranny. And like I mentioned in my Handmaid's Tale video, we also have the little symposium. I just love those little epilogues. I think that, I don't know, they amuse me. I mean, they're serious. Like I said, they touch upon, biases about historical analysis and all that, but I don't know, there's something, not whimsical, but I think it's a brilliant little device. I don't know. It doesn't really add that much that we didn't already know to the story, but it fell into place pretty naturally. Like I said, I really like this novel. It does have flaws. Is it better than The Handmaid's Tale? No. Is it not as good as The Handmaid's Tale? Maybe a bit. Like I said, it's hard to even think of this as its own self-contained novel because it's irrevocably tied to The Handmaid's Tale. It wouldn't even, to me, make much sense to read this without having first read The Handmaid's Tale. So, I don't think I would give it 5 stars. No, I didn't give it 5 stars. It's a bit under that. And perhaps I would give it even a bit less if there hadn't been The Handmaid's Tale first. Although, again, like I said, that wouldn't even make sense. So it's not quite as good as The Handmaid's Tale because, well, precisely perhaps because it relies on the existence of The Handmaid's Tale. The Handmaid's Tale is self-contained. You could just read that and never read this. And I will say something about the ending, about the tone of the ending. The ending is positive. Now, my mum also read this after I did. She was disappointed by the Testaments because she had very high expectations. I think, ironically, I didn't. I just wanted more information about Gilead, most of all, and to see different points of view, different types of characters, and I got that. So I was satisfied. I was like, yeah, I'm good here. Thank you, Margaret Atwood. My mum was really disappointed. Perhaps she read too many reviews lauding this, and she was really annoyed by the ending because she thought it was basically too fan-servicey. That was my expression, not hers, but that's basically what she meant. And you know what? I can kind of see her point. It wasn't strictly necessary, or I think you could have kept the positive ending, but there's a little bit at the end that I suppose you could have left out. And yeah, I get her point, but at the end of the day, I'm like, you know what? It's such a dark story with The Handmaid's Tale, and then, of course, the TV series really gives into the darker aspects of it. And like I said, I was satisfied with the world building, with the different perspectives of different characters, so I was like, oh, come on, just let them have a win for once. So, and usually I'm pretty critical about this stuff. I don't like fairy tale endings at all. So, yeah, I get where my mum is coming from, but you know what? Screw it. I was content. And now I will move on to the quotes. History does not repeat itself, but it rhymes. And actually, to be perfectly honest, that's not a Margaret Atwood quote. That's a quote that she put in at the beginning of her novel. But I thought it was a brilliant quote, so I just popped it in. We were custodians of an invaluable treasure that existed unseen inside us. We were precious flowers that had to be kept safely inside glass houses, or else we would be ambushed and our petals would be torn off and our treasure would be stolen and we would be ripped apart and trampled by the ravenous men who might lurk around any corner out there in the white, sharp-edged, sin-ridden world. How little time it takes to change a face. Carve it like wood, harden it. No more of that wide-eyed daydream gazing I used to. I've become sharper, more focused. I've become narrowed. Why did I think it would nonetheless be business as usual? Because we've been hearing these things for so long, I suppose. You don't believe the sky's falling until a chunk of it falls on you. The adult female body was one big booby trap, as far as I could tell. If there was a hole, something was bound to be shoved into it, and something else was bound to come out, and that went for any kind of hole. A hole in a wall, a hole in a mountain, a hole in the ground. Wedlock. It had a dull metallic sound, like an iron door clicking shut. It's better that way, and I am a great proponent of better in the absence of best. A bird of the air shall carry the voice, and that which hath wings shall tell the matter. Love is as strong as death. Technically, it's supposed to be a biblical quote, but it has meaning and resonance within the story, and I thought it was quite beautiful, so I decided to include it. That was my review of The Testaments by Margaret Atwood. Let me know what you thought of the novel if you read it. Were you happy with the sequel? Were you disappointed like my mum? I'd love to know. Until next time, have a lovely day. Bye-bye.